Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Christine Kovach. I'm the Manager of Bereavement Services at Mission Hospice, and I am just absolutely delighted to welcome our longtime dedicated volunteer, Will Holsinger, who will guide us this evening in an introduction to mindfulness. I'm going to pass this over to Will to lead us this evening. Thank you so much. I'm going to step this way and let you have the camera.
Good evening. Welcome to this Introduction to Mindfulness Meditation workshop. Perhaps we could start out, I'll give you some background about me that will help you as you listen to have some idea of why I'm here claiming to be able to tell you anything about meditation. I've been a direct care volunteer with Mission Hospice since about 2010, and went through the training actually twice, because the first time I went through, because I was working and still am, I couldn't get all of the classes in. So I went through a second time with so I could make sure I got enough of the program. I came to Mission Hospice because a person that I had identified with, having gone to a day-long workshop for them about aging, death, and dying, suggested that if I was interested in working in that field, even as a volunteer, that perhaps I first go to a hospice program and see if it resounded with me. I came to Mission Hospice, went through the training, and it was very comfortable and very natural for me. So that's what I started doing with Mission Hospice. Since the pandemic started, I haven't really been able to do much with direct care. I was on the Vigiling team and was one of the original people starting the Vigiling program here. And I did some Vigiling during that time, but no direct care on an ongoing basis. I did get one assignment and the person died before I could even start. So that's my association with Mission Hospice. By way of background and training and education, I'm an attorney. And part of my practice includes end-of-life planning. So I have that familiarity with end-of-life issues. But my relationship with death goes much further back than my work in my career or my work with Mission Hospice as a volunteer. I like to think of my relationship with death that we are old friends. It started for me at the age of 5 when I drowned in the Russian River in Marin County. I had what might be called a near-death experience. It was something that was profound for me even as a child, although I didn't really think about it in any sort of intellectual way. It wasn't something that I carried with me. But in my late 30s, I had occasion in talking with my father to share that experience. And he was there, and he was the one that found me on the bottom of the river on his third and final dive and brought me up. And I was talking about the lifeguard giving me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and pumping my chest. And he said, "Oh no, I'm the one that did that." And I looked at him and smiled, and I touched his arm and I said, "Don't you remember the lifeguard pushed you out of the way?" And he looked at me and his eyes got big and his jaw dropped. He said, "Oh my God, you're right, but how could you have known?" And that's because I was in that place where I could be aware of something like that. So that's when my relationship with death started. It continued on with my grandmother. I was a young teenager when she died and we went to visit her, and another time when I went with my mother's boyfriend and I was a teenager and he was in a hospital and wasn't going to be getting out. But more importantly, and it started a little bit later when I was probably in my 30s, early 30s, and I delivered my stillborn daughter 7 months of term from a cord around the neck. That was a year after my mother died, and I was called up to Marin County where she was being cared for by Hospice of Marin and a volunteer in her home. And she had been struggling for several months, and the doctor couldn't figure out why she was still alive. And the reason why I didn't know about it more at the time is because she estranged herself from myself and my two brothers, and she was an angry, bitter woman who was dying of throat cancer from her years of drinking and smoking. So I got the call from one of her caretakers and rushed up to see her. She couldn't speak. She was semi-comatose. I was there and spent overnight. And the second night, I sat on her bed and just got real quiet. Started crying and told her it's okay to die. I had to leave that night and come back to San Mateo County to be with my wife, who was then not over 9 months pregnant. And indeed, our son was born about a week after my mother died. She died that night, I'm told, quietly in her sleep. In 2004, I was with my father in a care facility in Roseville, Northern California. And his wife, my stepmother, and one of her children were going out to lunch. She had been bedside and was absolutely loyal and devoted to him and been caring for him from the results of a stroke many years before. And she needed to go out and get something to eat. She needed a little bit of a break. So I stayed with my father during that time, and in that hour, he went through the process of dying, and he went through the death rattle, and I was sufficiently unclear and uncertain and afraid that I got nervous, and I went out and I called the nurse because I didn't understand exactly what was happening. And I was not with him for one brief little moment, but when I came back is when he passed. As a hospice volunteer, I've been with many other people as they've breathed their last, or if you want to talk about people who are actively dying, but what we call transitioning, or in the stage of active dying, and die within 6 hours of my having seen them, I've probably been with 40 or so people, including my family members. And that number pales in comparison to my mentor, who sent me to Mission Hospice some 15 years ago, a fellow named Frank Ostaseski. He's the one who authored the book, The 5 Invitations, and is considered to be one of the leaders in the field of aging, death, and dying, and being with the dying. He's been with thousands. So each circumstance is different. So that's enough for me for the moment of my background with Mission Hospice and with aging, death, and dying. And now I'll tell you about my meditation practice. I began my own quest in meditation, my own version of meditation, probably 25 years ago or more. I am what I would call a seeker. I was seeking some sense of spirituality, some sense of connection with a power greater than myself for many years. And as I began experimenting with meditation, I found myself drawn to what I would refer to as deep meditation. That's a meditation where I end up becoming unaware of the world around me. I'm just sitting, and I have a very inflexible body and inflexible back, so I don't sit cross-legged on the floor. I need to sit in chairs or couches or whatever's available to me. And so I began a process of deep meditation. I got to a point where I was meditating for up to 3 hours at a time. And when I came out of the meditation, I didn't know how much time had passed. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what my awarenesses or experiences were. But over the next few days or weeks, even months, I would find myself having awarenesses and understandings and a way of reacting to situations that I used to handle, usually badly. That was different. So I have been doing that a long time, and I've been going to communities, faith communities, and meditation retreats all around the Bay Area and even further. And I had actually, and I'd gone to Asia a few times and sought out temples there for meditation. But when I started dealing more and more with Frank Ostaseski and going to his retreats and thinking of him more as a mentor and as a teacher for me, I described for him what it is I did. So about 10 years ago, maybe a little less, he said, well, that sounds interesting, and it might even be pleasant, and it might even be helpful. But why don't you try staying in your body when you meditate? That's what Theravada, Vipassana meditation is all about. That's mindfulness meditation. And so I consider that to be advice that it was well worth pursuing for a while. And that began my journey into mindfulness meditation. I began working on staying aware and awake. And by doing that, I couldn't meditate for 2 or 3 hours at a time anymore. I found that the time that I could do it was much less. I found sometimes it was very little, a few minutes, sometimes as much as 45 minutes or even an hour, but very limited. And I found that for me, my sweet spot in meditation was when I was doing it in groups. And I went to Spirit Rock when I was down here in San Mateo. I got connected with Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City and went to retreats, and I began exploring mindfulness meditation and what that meant. I did so much of it that during the pandemic, I signed up for, enrolled in, and was accepted. My application was accepted for a mindfulness meditation teacher certification program that was organized, formed, and taught by Jack Kornfield, the co-founder of Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Marin, and Tara Brock, the co-founder of the Washington Insight Society. And so I went through that 2-year process, and at the beginning of this year, about 8 months ago, I was certified as a teacher in mindfulness meditation. So with that being said, I hope that hasn't been too boring. I'd like to invite each of you who would care to introduce yourself and perhaps talk about your familiarity with or your search for meditation. If I know whether you're a beginner or someone more practiced, perhaps I can focus my comments, my talk, if you will, on what your role in the world is right now in relationship to meditation. Perhaps I might start with Monette and invite you to unmute and tell me what your interest in meditation is, and then we'll go to the others that are here.
Well, I have tried meditation a few times. I've never been very successful, but having lost my husband almost 3 years ago, I've been searching for ways to deal with my grief. And so I've learned how to do kind of deep breathing for me, which seems to work a little. But anytime I've tried meditation, I have a mind that just keeps going and going, and I have a hard time calming my brain. And so I just, but I have not done any formal meditation training or mindfulness training.
Thank you, Manette. Indeed, the distraction and the grief is something that does come to all of us at some point in time. And I have found a way, and I've worked with people who have the same issue you do, Manette, who have been able to, as a result, focus more on their meditation, but even more importantly, process their grief. So I believe that there are tools that are available through mindfulness meditation that can help you. Beng, you are here. We haven't seen you yet on the Zoom, but I would love to hear from you if you'd care to unmute. If you don't want to, that would be perfectly fine.
I never meditate myself in the past. But sometimes throughout my life, I have been sitting quietly, not thinking about or not doing much or anything. Just sit there. Do you call that meditation? I don't know. And I didn't try to meditate to help my grief.
Thank you. Indeed, what you described in getting quiet thing can be considered a type of meditation. The first time I really felt like I was able to be in a place of meditation was quite clear for me. I was out camping and I was along this wonderful small river, and I found a place of tall grass where the deer had probably slept the night before. I laid down and looked up at the sun coming through the trees and the shadows, and I got very quiet and I wasn't thinking about anything else, and I didn't fall asleep. And I realized that when I could quiet my mind and be still in my body and not fall asleep was a good meditation. And indeed, many teachers that I've had at retreats that I've gone to have said, if you get to that place and you fall asleep, it's because you need to sleep. And the sleep is more important than the meditation because your body needs the rest. So if you're getting that quiet and not falling asleep, I would count that as good meditation.
When people meditate, do they think about anything or just for their mind go blank?
Well, thank you. That's a very good question. As I suggested, when I first started exploring meditation for myself, my mind went blank. My body was still, my eyes were closed, and I didn't fall asleep. And so that was a form of perhaps deep meditation. But the mindfulness meditation is when we stay aware and we stay in our body. And so the mindfulness aspect of it uses a technique of focus. And the focus often is a body scan or focusing on our breathing. So we use that as a way to eliminate or reduce down the other thoughts that we have, the monkey mind, if you will, that I've heard that phrase used. So when we can reduce down our thoughts and our focuses to one thing, focusing on our breathing, that's more of a mindfulness technique. Indeed, that's the doorway or threshold to mindfulness that we're taught at the very beginning, and we'll do some of that tonight.
I think meditation is more common with Eastern religions.
You're absolutely right. That's how meditation came to this country, was from Asia, and that's where it had its strongest start. In Europe, it was prayer. Prayer was the vehicle and focus to a sense of connection, a sense of spirituality. So there are many things in common with prayer and meditation. For instance, one way of meditating is through mantra. One of those mantras, the most classical and preeminent in Asian practices, regardless of the religion, is the use of the word Om, A-U-M, as it's spelled in English. And that has a resonance that is focused on for helping to go into meditation. Sitting quietly, Om, Om. Another form of mantra is almost prayer. If you listen to someone from the Catholic faith doing the rosary, there's a repetitive and a sing-song quality to that. And that is both prayer and meditation, prayer and a mantra, if you will. So there are commonalities there, but the mindfulness meditation is more a matter of focus rather than sound. And it does come out of Asia as its origin.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Bing. Raina, we see you there, and well, we see your name there. We'd like to invite you perhaps to tell us how you have come to this class and what your relationship with meditation is.
Thank you. So, yeah, I appreciate this. I've taken just an adult ed class on meditation, but I have the same question Bing had about how you know if you're even meditating. Like when I sit quietly in nature, reflecting, but focusing on the surroundings, I don't know if I'm actually meditating or I'm just reflecting. Like I don't know at what point it is. And in that class, he had us sometimes focus on a specific object or picture instead, because he acknowledged some of us have trouble focusing on our breath. So I guess is that still considered mindfulness meditation if you're focusing on an object and trying to put everything else aside and just focus on that? So I don't know at what point you're meditating, I guess.
Thank you. Well, what you've described, the focus on one thing, is the beginning of mindfulness meditation. It's a technique or tool or training, self-discipline that we can begin to use as a way of meditating mindfully, if you will, because the mindfulness is exactly what it sounds like, is being aware, being mindful of something. You can be mindful of your environment, indeed, when you're out in the country side and nature, and even scanning the vista that's there, whether it's far away or near, whether you're looking at a bee gathering pollen from a flower, or whether you're watching the clouds up in the sky. If you're able to be with that focus and be with that awareness, that's a form of mindfulness. There are many disciplines in meditation, including mindfulness, that some people in mindfulness will say you can be in a mindful state or be in a meditative state constantly as you walk throughout the day. I will suggest to you that that's much more of a discipline and much more difficult to do. But I have met some people that seem to live in that world, if you will, on an ongoing basis, and they can be remarkable people and very interesting. So it's all a world to explore. There are many techniques, and it's a matter of what resonates with you. Some people use yoga as a physical discipline to help them get into a place of mind quietness. And indeed, historically from the East, as Bing suggested, yoga and meditation, body movement or body stillness, were not separated from meditation. The two were considered to be a joined practice. So it's all a question of what works for you in a way that will quiet your mind and give you a sense of lack of stress, lack of conflict with the world around you, and being as present as you can in the moment. So thank you for your questions and your introductions. It gives me a better sense of who we are. I'd like to start by setting an intention, and we'll do this in a 10-minute meditation, perhaps. I'll guide it. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to help you set the intention for what we're doing here this evening. If you just simply get yourself in a place of physical comfort. If you're in a chair, be aware of your centering in your chair. Be aware of how you're seated. Get yourself comfortable and balanced and even. And I want to tell you that where you are right now, what we are doing right now, is a safe place. There's nothing here to disrupt you or to cause anything other than hold in their heart and in your heart the highest and best intention for good for the moment. I'd also like to tell you that there's no expectations. There's nothing you're expected to do. There's no demands on you. I'll be giving, or on me, I'll be giving you the benefit of my experience and my training. I'm not trying to accomplish anything with you. I'm trying to help introduce you to a way of relaxing, a way of being quiet. So as you do that, for some people, when they meditate, they close their eyes. Some people simply lose their focus a little bit. Some people leave their eyes open, and indeed, as we heard, they'll focus on some object directly in front of them, a spot on the wall, a light, whatever might work. And as you settle in, you can start with focusing on our breathing. That is one of the traditional and original tools for entering meditation. And it is a part of mindfulness meditation. Breathe in normally. Hold it for one moment. And breathe out. Repeat that as you wish. Your eyes close. And I know for some of us, our mind will interrupt, will speak to us about something else. What we had for dinner a moment ago, what we're going to have for dinner when this is over, whether it's getting dark outside, all those thoughts are natural. We don't resist those thoughts. Resistance is not comfortable. There are demands to resistance. Whatever that distraction is, look at it just for a moment and say, hello. I see you. I'm breathing now. And go back to focusing on your breath. This can happen as many times as is natural and comfortable for you. Here's that thought again. Hello. I see you. Thank you. I'm breathing now. Now, we can let our attention go to whatever bodily sensation we become easily aware of. For me, for this moment, is my upper arm. I feel them. There's a vibration there, a little warmth. That's my focus. For you, it might be your feet on the ground. It might be that itch that you may or may not scratch. Whether you do or don't is your choice, and it's what's comfortable for you, what you need. Focus on that bodily sensation. And then go back to your breathing. Bodily sensation or another calls your attention. Hello. I see you. Thank you. I'm breathing now. Thank you. That was just the briefest of introductions to mindfulness meditation. Mindful does not mean shutting out an awareness or something that's calling you. Mindfulness means allowing it all. There's nothing wrong with any awareness. Pain can be our friend. For instance, if we get a finger too close to a flame, the pain, the heat, tells us, move your finger away. We need that awareness in order to be physically safe and free from harm. We're here tonight because we've all had experiences or are experiencing, perhaps for the first time, the death of someone we love. That person's pending and more imminent death than we usually experience, or that person's recent death, has caused an imbalance in our world. So the anticipation of it is pulling us off balance. Mindfulness encourages us to be aware of what calls to us, what pulls at us. It doesn't call us to find an alternative to it. It calls us to recognize that it's here. Hello, I see you. Thank you. And at some point, it's time for me to breathe now. It's time for me to go on to this next thing I need to do in my day. As I mentioned to you, in 1988, I delivered my stillborn daughter. In that particular situation, I stuffed my feelings in order to be present for my wife, the mother. I set mine aside. And a year later, I found myself going to a support group of people who had experiences with neonatal death. And I needed to process that. It took me a year of going to this group. I forget exactly what it was. It was almost weekly. And it wasn't required, but I found myself going as much as possible because I needed to process that feeling. It hurt. I can still feel the hurt. I can still feel and see the whole process of being the person who delivered that child. I was encouraged to do that, and I'm forever grateful for that. I still feel the feelings, but they've become familiar to me. They've become friendly to me in a way, because without those feelings of hurt and loss and confusion, I wouldn't have what little relationship I have with that child, with that experience. So there's a sweetness to my pain now, and as I said, it's become more comfortable for me. So for each of you, as you're going through this process of anticipation or the experience, I know how you feel because I've felt that too. I had a friend who I met through Mission Hospice who was a volunteer. He had a background in nursing as well too. We became friends. We became opera buddies. We would go to the opera. She had steel rods and pins in her back and screws in her back from auto accidents and other problems. Chronic pain. Had to take serious medication to deal with the pain. And we were scheduled to go to the opera one night. And I called her up to confirm and what time I would pick her up. And she said, and I asked her how she was doing, and she said she was having terrible pain. And I said, well, you don't need to go. It's all right. I can go by myself or find someone else. She said, Will, what do you think I'd rather do? Do you think I'd rather go to the opera with you and be in pain, or I'd rather stay at home and be in pain by myself? So she had a remarkable spirit. She called me Friday afternoon. She said, Will, it's my time. Will you come be with me? I did. I stayed in her living room on a chair and sort of dozed off and on. And about 6 o'clock in the morning, I heard noises in the room, and I roused, and I looked at the time, and I said, oh, she's made it. She was wrong. And I went in, and she was drowning in her own fluids in her lungs. And I was absolutely helpless. All I could do was tell her I loved her and be there present. I called the Mission Hospice doctor on call at the time, and he said I could give her more morphine, but I tried to do that, but the reality is she was in pain and she was scared, and all I could do was be with her. Again, that's a memory that's very strong for me now. And part of the strength of that is because I had a relationship with her. There are staff members in Mission Hospice, volunteers in Mission Hospice, and I've been one of those for many years, who don't have the ego connection, the sense of loss or anticipation of loss, even with Mission Hospice clients that we've been with for a long time, because we didn't have a personal relationship with them. We didn't have personal experiences with them or family connection. But when you have those, you can't get away from those feelings. I'm mindful of a fellow named Ira Byock, B-Y-O-C-K, a physician in the Northwest here, who's renowned for his work with death and dying and making that a little more understandable and knowable to the public and people in the field. And he has his 4 things that matter most. He has several books out, and they're all well worth reading, I think, for anybody. But the 4 things that matter most are directed to people who are dying, have a terminal diagnosis, and are and have fewer days ahead of them than behind, or for the family members and friends. The first one is, please forgive me. When we're dying, we want to set things right oftentimes with the world and the people around us. We want to go to our maker, so to speak, or go on to whatever is next with a clean slate and without any regrets. I know for myself, with my mother, when I sat with her and told her it was okay to die, I think she needed that permission. She needed that, and she was not able to say to me, please forgive me, and she had not been a good mother. So I was able to give her that permission. The next of the 4 things that matter most for Ira Byock, that's his name, is I forgive you. So for whatever person is in this twosome face-to-face, the person who's dying and their family member or friend, please forgive me, I forgive you. It's mutual. There's a peace that we can achieve with that. The third is thank you. And for each of us, on whatever side you are in that twosome, sitting bedside perhaps, thank you for having been in my life. Thank you for what you've contributed to me. Thank you for what you've contributed to the world around you. I just met with someone who was very involved in the military earlier this afternoon, and they wanted to know that they mattered. Thank you. So that's always something worth saying. And in this context of a person whose death is imminent or who has passed, thank you can be a resounding and loud call for serenity, call for reconciliation, call for peace. I found too those are three things that can be done, and there's the fourth coming too, but three things that can be done even if the person has already passed. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. And the fourth, if you haven't already intuited what it is, the fourth is perhaps the most powerful of the four things that matter most. I love you. So please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. If we focus on those four phrases, repeat them slowly, that's a kind of mantra. That's a kind of mindfulness. You're focusing on the one thing each time that you say each one of those phrases. So I will tell you, processing grief is not easy, and it's not something that just do one and done. You don't just say those four things that matter most, and it's all better and okay. Grief is a long time to process, but grief can be processed if we don't have any more regrets. We are at peace with the regrets, and we can be at peace with the regrets with, hello, I see you. Thank you. I'm breathing now. I'd like to now get a little more heavily into a meditation practice, but one that you don't need to do by yourself alone or in silence and quiet. I will give you some guidance, but then we will have a period of time of some meditation and quiet. So this is an introduction to mindfulness through body scans. We've already done a little bit of that. I've also done it through breathing. But the body scan is going to be a little bit different. Again, if I can ask you please to get settled and comfortable. If you're in a chair, perhaps you can sit in a way that is a little bit upright so that you're not just leaning back in the chair. This is a way, for me at least, that I distinguish between meditating and dozing. When I doze, two things happen. My body slouches if I'm in a chair, and my head starts falling. In my practice, when my head has come down a little bit and I become aware of it, because dozing is an in and out awareness process, I just, hello, I see you, thank you, and I just gradually raise my head back up. Become aware again, my body, position, and posture. So as that happens for you, know that it's natural, normal, and it's okay. It's part of the process, including the process of practicing and learning. Like a muscle that's exercised, you get better at it as you do more of it. So get comfortable, perhaps putting your open hands face down on your knees, perhaps having your palms up in a way that's whatever's comfortable for you. Feet flat on the floor, if that's all right. And if you're lying in bed, that's perfectly okay too, or lying down on the floor with a pillow underneath you. Those are all perfectly good postures. Some people, in order to stay aware and awake, stand up for a meditation. Those are all good. So let's start being aware of the soles of your feet. Feel them as being the part of you that's closest to the earth. Be aware of that relationship. Be aware whether you're more firmly planted on the heels of your feet or on the balls of your feet. Be aware of whether your toes are flexed or relaxed and loose. Allow them to relax. Breathe comfortably. Sometimes forget to breathe, especially with stress. We're facing grief. Go back to our breath. Breath accepts the grief, allows it to be comfortable. Hello, I see you. Thank you. I'm breathing now, just on the bottoms of my. And allow that focus to come up to the ankles, inside or the outside, perhaps both. That's a normal and natural awareness. Our ankles connect us. Those flex, they're stiff. They support us. And we might pause with our mindfulness, focus on that sense of support. Just as our ankles support us and connect our feet to our legs, a walk through this life from one moment to the next as a connection. There's the moment we just experienced and the moment that we're going to. Our ankles are the connection between the two that support us from one moment to the next. Traveling up, we now experience our calves and our shins. Perhaps just one or the other, perhaps one leg or the other, perhaps lower legs become the center of our world just for the briefest of moments. In that moment, as we are aware of our lower legs, that becomes our world. And in that world, there is just a moment of repose, just a moment of quiet. We can go to our knees. Sometimes we have knees that are painful, damaged. Sometimes we have knees that we take for granted. You can focus and think about and feel into your needs, their unique qualities, characteristics, and history in your life. These, the most selfish and self-centered thing about us. And It is okay. Hello, I see you. Thank you. Sometimes we can feel our breath pulsing down over our hips and pelvis, and our legs and into our knees. We can feel that connection between our breath. Have our upper leg. We call this a body scan. It's a technique to be used to quiet all of the other hands for our attention. Feelings, our thoughts, emotions. Hello, I see you. Thank you. I'm focusing on my upper legs. We come up to our hips, just the barest beginning of our torso. And we recognize a difference between where we've been, legs or extremities, where we are now. And we can be distracted by the thought of what comes next. And be impatient. Oh, I want to get the rest of my body quickly because I want to watch my show. Need to use the restroom. Those are all good. You need to take care of any of those things. Perfectly reasonable and appropriate. Meditations can sometimes be interrupted by other needs or demands or for our attention. The doorbell rings. And when that's finished, come back to your seated posture. Settle in. We're at our hips and lower torso now, where we are just briefest of moments. There will be time later to make your part of your body focus your attention, your mindfulness for longer periods of time. But it need not be now. We can move on. Let's move to our abdomen. Become aware of our abdomen. Whether we're full from a meal or feeling a little hungry. We can use our hands. We can move our hands to our abdomen. Just be aware of that part of our body. Just to say hello. Just to give yourself a little nourishment. You can hold yourself. Self-awareness, that self-regard, that sense of comfort, kind of nourishment, different from food. It is a nourishment. Be aware of that part of you. We can add to our phrase, hello, I see you. What do you need right now? You need to take care of something for your abdomen right now. Take care of it, just as if you need to sleep. As you were going through this process, it's okay to sleep. You need now. Thank you. You've taken care of your needs. I'm focusing on my abdomen. One final touch, and you move your hands back to your position of relaxation and repose. We go up to our heart. Again, it's something that you feel called for, something that would feel good and comfortable. You can put your hand, one or both hands, to your heart. Heart is where we have a sense of emotional connection. That's where we typically consider our emotions to come from, to come to emanate from. A form of self-care. Or a biox. 4 things that matter most. Love you. You can say it to yourself. The person that is close to you, that is not doing well, is facing death in the near term, or someone who's just gone, you can give it to them as well too. I love you. When we give that other person, I love you, part of the I love you sometimes comes with release you. We can say that to the other person. We can hold our hands to our hearts, and we can say, I love you to yourself. With that comes, I release you. Our hands down, relax. We can feel our shoulder. Awareness, our body scan comes up to our shoulder. Fronts, sides, the backs. There's a complex, just like there are many paths, many roads, many turns, many cross sections and intersections in our lives. Our shoulders can lead to our arms, can lead to our torsos, can lead to our heads, can lead to our backs. We can contemplate this sense of connection, this sense of intersecting pathways. When our mind wanders all over the place, with this sense of connection and where this thought of connection leads us, we can simply pause and say, hello, I see you, I love you, thank you. I'm focusing on my body right now. And then we can feel our arms. Part of meditation can involve movement. It can involve walking meditation, involve yoga. Part of meditation can be on a bicycle, the endorphins kicked in, and then that point of clear focus and mental high. Same thing with our arms. We can drop our arms down by our sides now. Let our arms just move freely, move them around a little. We don't need to have our arms and hands in any particular position. Be comfortable in this moment. Our arms do not need attention, even at the same time that we are attending to our arms and paying attention to them. Position of neutrality. Position of safety. There are no demands. There are no expectations. For people who believe in energy points, the next place to focus on is one of those that's called a chakra, the throat chakra. It often happens when we feel grief that we feel a welling up in our throat. We feel a tightness, we feel a nausea, we feel a swallow or breathe. And yet the throat can be a place of power, a place of energy, a place of certainty, and a place of security. Let's focus on our throat. Be aware of where our throat is right now. It can change at any moment, change day to day. But right now, be aware of your throat. As you are aware of your throat and can focus on just that part of you, just that part of your body, your throat, sensation that's there, there's some quiet. There's some freedom from pain and fear. There's equanimity, a sense of neutrality. Just for the moment. Now let's move on a bit further. Let's go to that point just above and behind the eye. That point can be the center and focus. Headache, center and focus of a cold, the center and focus of worry, the center and focus of anger. It can also be a center and focus of clarity. It is where mind connects to the rest of the body. Mind, the thoughts, voices, the body, the actions. We focus on that part of the body, just above the eyes and back behind. There's a sense of connection. The best, the worst of us, the harshest and comfortable. For many people, that's the regulator. For many other people, mindfulness, body, is what helps us, and being aware of the body is what helps us. And in our body scan, the final place focus is on the crowns or tops of our head. And I'm going to suggest that when you do this, you reach up the top of your head to the sky above. Sense of, for so many of us in so many cultures, of connection to the great power of what is, the great mystery. Some people it's God, other people it's eternity, great spirits. But whatever it is, allow from the top of your head, crown of your head, have a sense of reaching out into whatever mystery is there. Whatever connection might be there. I'm going to suggest that we be quiet. 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. We'll stop talking. We now have a body scan that you've just done. And you can contemplate on what we've done. You can go back to whatever part of the body you'd like to focus on. Just sit quietly with this new territory to explore, this new world. Thank you. In the time that's remaining to us, this will be an opportunity for questions and comments. And then I will also give you some idea of what the weekly program will be like that starts in January. It will be 1-hour sessions. And the protocol or process of meditation that I believe is a very powerful tool for the average person, particularly those dealing with trauma, grief, or other difficulties. Just give you the little teaser of what it's called. It's called the RAIN protocol, R-A-I-N. Again, as we did before, give an opportunity for each of you one at a time for any comments or questions you might have. I'll do my best to answer them.
I don't have any question, but I did learn something. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Rena.
Yes, thank you. This really helped clarify some of the things I've been, you hear about meditation a lot and mindfulness a lot. And I think this really helped clarify things. So I really appreciate you giving your time to us for us to do this. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. The program that will be coming up at the beginning of the year will, as I imagine, and I've talked to Christine about it somewhat, I contemplate it as a drop-in workshop each week, so that you don't need to have been to one in order to go to the next one. It's not, and while I do hope that it will have some cumulative benefit, it's not intended to be attend everything or nothing, so that people can come each time and perhaps learn and practice something that will be of benefit to them. One of the processes or protocols for meditation that I learned in my 2-year program came from Tara Brach. So you can certainly do a web search for Tara Brach's RAIN, R-A-I-N protocol, and you'll find a lot of information. What RAIN stands for is recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And the reason why I think that it's such a profoundly powerful tool for the average person is because it'll, especially those facing grief or the loss of a loved one in the future or in the past, is that it allows us to choose what we are going to focus on. We can start with issues that are less traumatic, less emotionally laden for us, and we can practice with those and get to the point where we each, on our own time and in our own way, can decide when we're prepared to deal more directly with the grief that we've had. And it's been my observation that when this practice is done, the grief actually becomes less of an overwhelming experience even before we focus on it, and that we have a sense of empowerment and spiritual strength, if you will, to be able to face that grief when we're ready to, and we become ready to. So the recognize is to recognize some relationship, some interaction, some experience that has caused us some harshness of feeling. We remember it and we're not comfortable with it, whether because we're angry or because we're tearful or fearful. The investigate is to investigate how that feels. Investigate where in our bodies we experience the sensation of that. Let me go back to the A first. I'm sorry, I took it a little out of order. I only did this yesterday with a partner. The A is to allow. Once we've recognized what it is we want to focus on, let's say it's some conflict we had with our partner, our significant other, yesterday, or a year ago, or whenever it might have been, we recognize some conflict we had with them, is to allow that sense, just like we allowed in the body scan ourselves to focus on one part of our body. We allow ourselves to focus on that experience. We allow ourselves to see the totality of it, the complexity of it, the origins of it, the causes of it, the resolution or result of it, and so forth. We allow it. We don't try to hide from it. We don't try to ignore it. We don't try to justify it or explain it. We just allow it. And then the I is to investigate where in our bodies we experience that harshness, that difficulty, that encounter, that sadness, whatever it might be. We investigate not the reasons for it. The reasons are not important. We investigate how we experience that in our body. Do we get a tightness or an uncomfortability in our stomachs, for instance? So we investigate. And the process for each of these, to recognize, to allow, and to investigate, each one of those is only 2 minutes. And that's part of the reason why I selected the 2-minute time at the end, so you'd have an experience of what that 2 minutes was like. To know that it was something that would come and would be done. To notice that it was manageable for that period of time. So to investigate how that feels in the body for 2 minutes. Maybe we investigate its texture. Is it rough? Is it soft? Is it scratchy? Maybe we investigate the color. Is it red with anger? Is it blue with cold like ice? What is the color of it? We can investigate all of that for ourselves because we translate, as the people that we are, we translate our experiences into different sensations, different awarenesses. The same way when we dream at night, we have dreams that we don't know where they came from. Sometimes they include people that we have some familiarity with in our life, but not necessarily. And we don't know where they came from. We just know that we had them, and sometimes we remember them and sometimes not. The same thing with investigating. And then the end, interestingly enough, actually has an alternative to nurture. And I'm going to go to the alternative first, because the original part of RAIN, when it was created by its original developer, used the phrase and the approach of non-attachment. If we were in conflict with somebody, or we had pain or fear with some encounter, to detach from it, non-attachment. Tara Brach found two things with that she wanted to be different. She found the non-attachment was just like some of you tonight have talked about, trying to not think about whatever it was that was bothering you, rather than welcome it. I see you. Thank you for being here. Okay? So rather than deny it, rather than try to avoid it, non-attachment seemed to go, a lot of people seem to go there, and it didn't work for them. The other thing is that for people who are dealing with trauma and trying to process trauma, they really wanted support. They wanted a hug. They wanted to be loved. They wanted to know everything was going to be okay. And so the non-attachment did not give that sense of compassion that Tara Brach felt was so necessary for this process. So she came up with the word nurture. We can hold that person, hold that conflict. We can hold ourselves in response to or in the course of that harshness, that interaction, that stomach knot that we might get. We can hold that. We can hold our stomach, as I suggested in our process tonight. So the nurture can be to nurture ourselves. Hello, I see you. What do you need? So the hello, I see you, what do you need is recognizing what it is you need. Maybe you needed a hug from that person and you never got it and they're not able to give it to you anymore. You can now recognize that you needed that, and you can give yourself that nurture. You can think to yourself, imagine in your mind that that person was holding you and nurturing you. And that nurture can also include, I love you. It's a very important part of nurture. And you can say it to yourself. You can say it to the other person. You can imagine the other person saying it to you. I know one person who had an unpleasant encounter with police, and they felt like they were a victim. And they had the most difficult time thinking about the idea of saying to the police officer, I love you. And I don't know what their result or resolution was. I just know that at the time that I dealt with them, they had that awareness, that difficulty, and that was their struggle. So the RAIN protocol is something that's done, again, can be done in typically when I do it now with partners that I have, it's a 30-minute process. It's very quick, and it can be done more slowly. You can do the RAIN process just by yourself, so it has flexibility. Just by yourself, you can do it with a trusted partner or someone that you choose to trust and develop a relationship with. You can do it in a group where you feel safe. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to tell you tonight that this is a safe place. There are no expectations. There are no demands on you. So I wanted to give you a little taste or flavor of how that could be. if you have a different experience in your life and it makes you wary. So with that being said, we have a few more minutes. It's 7:24, but we don't have to use them. I want to thank you very much for your being here tonight. Thank you very much for your presence and your time.
I'm gonna come
And I'm
back
going
you.
to
into view.
bring it back over to Christine.
I'm gonna come back into view and just thank you so much. What a beautiful offering, Will. I'm so grateful that you've been here this evening. Your pace is so nurturing.
Oh,
And so I experienced this evening as medicine for me. And hopefully this has been helpful, useful practice. Monette, I see that you've unmuted. Did you want to say something too?
No, I just wanted to thank him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll be back. So we'll see him again. If you want to tune back in, we'll be on Wednesday evenings starting in January. It's just like this, but for 1 hour,
mhm.
from 6 to 7.